We're ready.
Okay, my name's Lauren Francis, guys, for the third time. Obviously, we're a comm major. My study buddy is Dave back there. He's had a great time this semester. My mentor is a good family friend, Melissa Shaker. I chose her because she started off with the Sanford company right out of college, and she did sales. Now she's grown within the company. She's been there about like 8 years or so. She's doing very well, so I kind of wanted to, get some advice from her and kind of follow in her footsteps, hopefully with the progression in the job field. So I looked at the theory of functional group decision making as it relates to family dynamics and communication. I was always kind of interested in like the family situations as we learned about through different comm classes. I believe it was Dr. Nadler's 336 class or something. So here's the preview of what I'm going to talk about. The core theory, then I'll go into research questions and propositions, the lit review, findings, application, future implications, and then the summary. So first of all, we've got the core theory. The two scholars here, which I can't pronounce their names, so you guys can read that. Basically, Guren and Hayekau. And then basically they say that in order to achieve group cohesion, certain requirements need to be satisfied. If the group is motivated and capable and they have the resources available to them, they can easily come to those decisions. But here's the 5-step process that they discuss that can help in that situation. First of all, the first step is showing understanding of the matter to be resolved. Basically, the members need to examine and understand the reason why they want to make a decision. Obviously, without that understanding, there might be a huge problem. The magnitude of the decision might not be known to the group, and they might come to a rash decision. Second of all, selecting criteria to solve the problem. Without like the original screening criteria, there's no basis for the group members to make an educated decision. After this point, the group members can identify alternatives, basically to generate a complete list to maximize the chance of choosing the best decision. It's always better to have more options than fewer. And then at that point, assessing alternatives in relation to criteria, basically evaluate in terms of how realistic it is to solve the problem at hand. And then at that point, the group would choose the best option based on the past 4 criteria that they've filled at that point. Okay, so my research questions that I proposed are: how does the relationship of step families affect communication within the family unit? How do families in times of crisis or conflict make decisions? And how can parents and children share in the decision-making process? And I came up with 4 propositions. The last proposition kind of answers my second research question as well. Basically, my first one is that step families have a more difficult time communicating, therefore need to spend more time refining communication skills together than the original nuclear family unit. Secondly, the use of functional group decision-making can aid families in time of crisis or conflict. The third one, parents and children can share in decision-making processes if the parents are able and willing to yield some amount of power to the children. That can kind of empower everyone from both sides and would help the communication as a group. And then the fourth one, by staying calm in times of crisis, families can better utilize the functional group decision-making model. Okay, so I chose to do secondary research. I don't know a whole lot originally about, family communication and psychology and all that kind of stuff, so I thought it would be best to look at other people's studies. These are the main sources I'm going to use. There's about 4 or 5 of them. The first book that I found is called Group Communication in Context. With that book, I found that there are a lot of rules established about concealing and revealing issues between family members, which those rules can kind of become a problem if they're not communicated well, and then at that point there would be an issue. Everyone would need to kind of sit down and solve it, obviously. The second one is Widening the Family Circle, and that book was about like any different kinds of family relationship you can think of. I focused on the step families, obviously. That was kind of an interest to me. And I found in that book that strong and happy step families can exist when they learn to communicate well together. Within step families, there are often certain times that can make the family come closer together or farther apart. And those times can be like at holidays or when there's a big crisis at hand, or they need to decide on money issues and things like that. So, and also problems arise when different members of the family have varying levels of motivation to make decisions and communicate. Like, for example, like older people our age, if they just get into a step family situation, they might not have a large motivation to learn how to communicate with the family, whereas younger children that can be in that situation all the time might have a higher motivation to do so, or basically be forced into that kind of situation. The third book that I focused on is Families in Crisis. That's kind of discusses children that are soon to be placed out of the home because of different situations. They could be just delinquent kids, or there's drug problems or things like that. So basically that talks about counseling and how to teach the family how to learn to work together better. And then the last book that I want to share with you guys was Building Communication Theories. Within that book, I learned that the central role of decision making is to make sure the task at hand is satisfied. And again, with functional group decision making, you can utilize the 5-step model. And as I mentioned before, the behavior of group members directly affects the outcome. Depending on the motivation level of everybody in the group, can be an effect on that. The application to the real world, or what we've been learning, basically how to understand how to better communicate within a family unit. Obviously we all have families, so there you go. And then relate functional group decision making into working well with others, not just family members. Obviously, I thought it'd be interesting to apply to families, but you don't always have to do that. If you think about it within a work environment situation, obviously it can help to better communicate and then utilize that model as well. Some key findings, basically the functional group decision making can be utilized, which I think I just mentioned like 10 seconds ago, but to aid in the decision-making process. And then step families, which I focus on a lot, often have a difficult time becoming a cohesive group. They need to basically be taught to learn how to work together and achieve happiness. Families in crisis can benefit from the counseling services to teach them these skills. And then adults need to understand that children want privacy, and they also wish to share in the decision-making process with their parents. And then future implications for the research. Basically, there's a need to better connect, I guess, decision-making and then family theories. I kind of had to do a lot of that on my own. Maybe there should be more like studies in that area. It's helpful to aid families in times of crisis situations. As I said, like kids that are about to be placed out of the home or adopted out or things like that can benefit. The link to contracts, it can help me build an e-portfolio and understand how I can relate comm theories and things that I've learned throughout the 4 years here to everyday life. And here's the summary. I let you guys know what exactly functional group decision making is, what I learned from the literature review. I applied it to step families just to help general communication and to help parents and children both share in the decision-making process. And I talked about the application to future or for friends and family to understand this information and be able to use it as well. And that's all. Does anyone have any questions?
Lauren, is your mentor certified in family counseling?
No.
Do you need to have certification to do this kind of counseling? Or because the focus is on the communication, can you do this without having a counselor's license?
I don't think so.
You don't think you can?
Meaning, wait, me or like
No,
be a counselor?
In other words, if you want to do it as a communication consultant,
Yeah.
could you do this with families as a communication consultant without having a counselor's certificate through the state?
I mean, I didn't come across that in my research, but I'm assuming, I guess when you're coming at it from a communication aspect rather than like a psychological
Right.
aspect, I'm assuming
Or
you
a
probably,
social.
yeah, I'm assuming you probably wouldn't need one,
Yeah.
so.
Because, I mean, I never needed any, for any of the communication consulting. I never worked on this. There's such a need for this area. And I'll be honest with you, different psychologists and sociologists I talk to don't have the communication background,
Right,
and that piece is missing when they do therapy.
right, that's why.
Did you ever discuss any of this with your mentor at all, about